Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Canadian jazz pianist Phil Nimmons on the 2020 CD The Nimmons Tribute. We caught up with him to probe the 2020 CD. It's called Volume 1 to the Nth, and it's a tribute to the 97-year-old jazz icon, clarinetist, bandleader, composer, arranger, and educator Phil Nimmons. His grandson came up with the idea of gathering a bunch of musicians who have known and worked with the Canadian jazz legend, recording an album as a tribute to the dean of Canadian jazz. This all during a global pandemic when we need it most. It's a great story. Enjoy.
I really appreciate you taking some time out to talk with me on Jazz today. This is a great story, man. This whole album, the incarnation, it's a really great story.
Thank you for wanting to talk about it, too, and checking it out, for sure.
You know, I guess with 2020 and COVID-19 being a tapestry, you know, it's all about tapping into, you know, taking a minute to, like, reflect on our lives. Family is kind of central to that. Your story about this album has all of those woven into it. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the alpha to the omega, kind of how all of this came about.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all started well before the current pandemic situation. About 2 years ago, it was actually my mother, Holly, who sort of said, hey, maybe we could try to apply for a grant, and maybe we can make an album, you know, to dedicate to Phil and pay tribute to him. And so we started getting the ball rolling about 2 years ago, but then, of course, there's lots going on, and it's just never happened. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and there was a lot more time on our hands, so and a lot more availability for, you know, some really great musicians. So it ended up being sort of a blessing for the album in a sense, because we found this window where we were able to record, and I had a lot more time to work on the arrangements, which, you know, took a solid 6 months of work, you know, because his original charts for all these tunes are written for much larger ensembles, so finding a way to scale the pieces down and keep the integrity of the writing with a smaller band was difficult. But yeah, it's really been like it's felt meant like it's been meant to be in a sense, because it's all worked out so beautifully as far as timing, and with the pandemic and everything. Yeah, it's great.
And who we are referring to specifically is Phil Nimmons, and he has been called the Dean of Canadian Jazz. Talk about him.
Yeah, well, I mean, up here in Canada, he's, you know, especially in his day, he's like a household name. He had a pretty well-known band named Nimmons and Nine, and then it was later Nimmons and Nine plus Six, so it got a little bigger. But here he was on the radio. He played on the CBC, which is, you know, our national radio channel. It's been around for a long time. And he's also been a huge, you know, advocate for music education, and a huge supporter of younger musicians. So, you know, he's got quite a legacy of music and of sort of passing on the tradition up here. So, you know, it felt like the right thing to do, to honor him and try to bring some more ears back around to his music, because it's amazing writing. You know, he's got such a incredibly lyrical, melodic sensibility, and harmonically, like he was really sort of innovative in a lot of ways in some of the orchestration that he did for his big band, bringing in a lot more sort of orchestral colors, and you know, he's one of a kind. So he's got such a love of music, and just sort of a joyful playfulness about his music. And on top of that, he loves to swing, you know, so it's been my whole life listening to him and his music, and, you know, I sort of take it for granted because he's my grandfather and everyone reveres him up here. But, you know, it finally took him in my 30s now, and it took me a while to finally really dig into his music and try to understand it from the inside. So that's why why I've done this.
The grandson of a jazz icon, was it a foregone conclusion that you were going to follow in familial footsteps and get involved with music, and specifically jazz?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I've always been around music for sure. It was actually my grandfather, Phil's wife, Noreen, she was a classical pianist as well, and that's how they met initially. And she was the one to actually sit me up at the piano when I was a little kid and show me some things. And then, you know, from there, I've just been around it, you know, in school. And, you know, I didn't think that it would be my career, but then some point in my 20s, I sort of felt I need to try to give this a go, at least give it a shot, because it's something that I love, and it's materialized for me, and I will always be grateful for that. So yeah, it's difficult sometimes living under there's a certain expectation being the grandson of an icon, as you say, but he, I've tried, I think that's what I've learned from this album actually, is that it's my own path in a sense. He laid the foundation and he's passed on the tradition, but that it's up to me to keep on taking it forward into the future and in my own way that's true to my own, personal identity as a musician.
Aside from your family and the history that you have, what was the first live jazz show that you saw that really kind of motivated you and made you think, man, that's great?
Yeah, well, it would be Phil for sure. It would be one of my grandfather's shows, because I have actually I wrote an article for a magazine up here recently, and I was writing about that first musical memory that I have was being at a club called George's Spaghetti House, and I just remember the sound and the atmosphere and the bright lights on the stage, and those kind of experiences when I was a kid, I think really have always stayed with me, and it transfixed me at that age and left a really deep impression on me. But there's a certain magic that it's beyond just the notes and the technical aspects of music that really it's very enchanting. So I think I've always sort of been chasing that feeling that I got from that first show of Phil's.
The great thing about life, whether it's a mentor or it's a family member, and, your grandfather obviously plays both of those roles, is that life can come full circle. And I would think making a tribute like this during such an extraordinary time on the planet is quite full circle. What's been the reception like? How did you feel when you actually saw the CD and saw that the world was going to actually see this?
Yeah, it was a really special feeling. One that I didn't really quite expect, because there was a lot of uncertainty around the album, whether or not we would finish it, whether we would release it, promote it, and just how it was going to all roll out. And like I said earlier, it's been it feels sort of fated in a sense that it's all worked out. Things have just lined up, and that's one of the big things about the album is realizing how many people love Phil and remember Phil, and it's amazing the number of people who have reached out and recounted memories of being with him, or it just seems to bring people together in a sense, and I think that's definitely what we could use in this current juncture in time, is not only just the enjoyment of listening to music, but bringing each other together. The tradition of jazz I think that's a big part of the tradition, is bringing people together and enjoying music, talking about music, good memories, good times, and that's been a real special part of the album for sure.
What's the best joy that you get out of being a musician? Aside from what you saw with an icon in your family and how you were raised, but you yourself, just going through performance and being a musician, what do you enjoy the most out of it?
Yeah, I think it is that feeling, that sort of magic that happens when time loses all meaning, and you're just sort of get transported to another world. It just happens so unexpectedly. Definitely when I'm playing, I miss that a lot right now with the pandemic. We're not doing not nearly enough of that, but when you got a group of people together and you're creating spontaneously, or creating something together, it can just slip into this flow state where everything just it's like a meditation in a sense, and that's really, I think I always want to chase that feeling, because it's such an amazing thing to experience.
So when we do get back to live music, obviously everyone's longing for it, fan and musician alike. When that happens, what do you hope we realize about this time away from live music?
Oh, I hope we come back with an even greater appreciation for it. I'm holding on to that hope, because a lot of clubs, a lot of the musicians themselves, it's very difficult to get through this time without any work, and the venues can't stay open without people there attending shows. So I really hope that there's sort of like a surge, an inverse reaction proportional to what we've experienced, for the pandemic, and that people, who have been craving that connection, that human interaction, will hopefully, I'm just speaking in optimistic terms right now. I really don't know how it's going to play out, but I think that's been such a huge part of who we are as humans over centuries, is congregating for musical enjoyment and connecting through music, that I can't see it being just disappearing. So I have high hopes that it will come back stronger than ever.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Oh man, I didn't expect to get so psychological or philosophical. Who do I think I am? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I think I'm another human on this planet, who's a unique individual, as we all are. Yeah, I think I found more of my identity through the process of doing this album, because for so long I think I lived under the shadow of Phil, in a sense that, there comes a certain expectation when people know you're related to somebody, like Phil. And I think that's where I wanted to always distinguish myself and not really, play into that too much. But by sort of embracing his legacy through this album, I think I've sort of found some of my own individualism, in a sense that it's allowed me to, process what it means to be Phil's grandson, and, realize that really I am my own person and my own creative force. I think we all have our own unique creative personalities within us, and it's through the exploration of our own internal creative landscapes, and then also exploring, sharing that with others and exploring what other people have to offer. There's such a richness there. So it makes, I want to keep exploring that, and I probably have a better answer for you, as time goes on.
No, that's great, man. That's a great answer. Sean, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz today. Good luck with the album and the return to the stage. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Joe. Thanks so much for connecting. All the best.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Canada, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Sean for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.